Good afternoon, all, ladies and gentlemen. We have now come to a very important aspect of this conference, and that is the exposition of the basic human values. And I can say that we have two speakers this afternoon whom I am sure will leave you in no doubt as to the concept of education in human values. Dr. Art Jumsai would be the first speaker. If you look at your folders, some details are included in the folder about each speaker. This is to cut down the time, because time is very precious for us. Without much ado, I have great pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, in asking Dr. Jumsai to address us.
Ladies and gentlemen, well, should really be brothers and sisters, because we are well and truly brothers and sisters. The world today has progressed in the field of science and technology. We have progressed a long, long way. We have gone to the moon, to the various planets, and we are now traveling outside our solar system. But man on earth has not found peace, has not really found true peace and happiness. Instead, we are more in a state of confusion. We have more and more problems, or so it seems, on earth, despite our progress in the field of science and technology. When we try to use science and technology to develop our world, of course, we get a problem. Our industries are now using new technologies. We are producing more and more goods. And as a result, we have more goods to sell. Nowadays, man is no longer happy with just a little hut. We have to have our fans or our air condition, our lights, our radios, our television, our refrigerator, and many other conveniences. And we have most of those now in our houses. Yet, we're not so happy. What is the reason for this? Because we have more goods from our industrialization. We have to sell them, so we advertise in our radio, television, various media, and people begin to believe in that. We believe in those advertisements. So the result is that we want more and more. We want to buy this, we want to buy that. Marketing people have created a need for everything, even though we don't really need it. So our desires have increased more and more. And that causes our unhappiness. We don't have a limit on our desires. We need more and more things. We want more and more things. And when we don't have a limit to our desires, naturally we become dissatisfied. And therefore we are unhappy. The world is therefore in a more state of confusion all the time because of this excess desire. We have to learn to control our desire. We have to reduce or have a ceiling on our desire. in order to find more peace within ourselves. One of the reasons why we do not have peace in our mind, one of the reasons why we are in a state of confusion, is that because man doesn't really know what is the real value in our life. We don't know what is really good for us. The true value, the values that will help us to find peace and happiness. The values that will help us to progress in life. We don't know where we are going. We don't know what our purpose in life is. So we are like blind people who grope along in the dark, not knowing exactly where he's going. That's why we are in a state of confusion. Earlier speakers in the morning has mentioned that the purpose of education is to give peace and happiness. And we see in our world that our education is not really giving us peace and happiness at the moment. So we have to, our education, we have to educate our young children. What is the human values? What are the human values? We have to help our children to grow with character, with human values in their heart, so that we can bring about peace, happiness, prosperity to the world. I came to England when I was a young boy. In fact, in 1951, my first visit to England. I've been brought up in England. I went to school in England and continued until my PhD in England. And reflecting back on my past when I was in England, I see a hope for future children, future generations. Because when I first came to England, I was a very, very bad and naughty boy. I was very emotional, always angry with people. I attended grammar school in Enfield Grammar School, for 2 years there. And there I was creating all types of troubles. Already I had some signs of becoming a scientist. I invented a big cannon when I was only 12 and 13. And I was shooting big lead cannonballs at the garage door of the family that I stayed with. I blew it all up. I nearly killed people with that bomb that I created. I was boxing everybody. I hit everybody, not only boys, but girls as well. In class, I was making all types of noises to distract the attention of my fellow students and try to create problems for the teachers. And I always challenged many boys to a duel outside the class for a boxing match. And I was unbeatable because I used Thai boxing. English boys don't know how to use Thai boxing. So I beat everyone with our kickboxing because we can use any parts of our body. I became a champion boxer when I was a student, both outside the ring and also in the ring, because English boys in those days were afraid to box me even in the ring because they knew that they would be beaten outside the ring afterwards. So I was a clear champion boxer for many years, unchallenged. So in those days, as you see, I was a very, very bad boy. But somehow, the education in human values worked on me. Before I came to England, before I left Thailand, my father worked and worked on me. He knew I was a very naughty boy. And so every day, before we would go to bed, evening, every night, he would tell us 2 or 3 stories. Each story contained some human values. Again, I was still naughty, I was still bad in those days, but somehow the stories that he told me gradually worked inside my subconscious mind. It went in there, it was kept there, but finally it came through into the conscious mind, and it helped me to change. Those stories that my father told me since I was a very young boy until the time I left Thailand really worked. It helped. Stories are wonderful things, wonderful techniques in education in human values. So I see a hope, having seen my past in England, how bad I was, but yet many things came to my rescue, starting with my father, his stories. In the old days, I'm sure most of us here will remember how our grandmother used to tell stories to us in our house. But nowadays, children have their eyes fixed to the, I call it, drugging box, the television, the video. And we no longer have privacy in our own house. Many things are transmitted to this screen for our children. They can see all the violence, all the crimes, all the latest fashion, everything, all the advertisements and so on. And this is dragging our children in the opposite direction to what we are all trying to do in this conference. We have a hard battle. It is a battle. We are now declaring war with our EHV. We're going to beat the television. We're going to help pull our children back from all these external influences. It's a tough battle, but we have to arm our children with a defense against all these bad influences. And that defense is the education in human values. It's what we're going to discuss now, what we're going to discuss tomorrow also. So let us now look at what the human values are. Many experts have been trying to find out what are the values for us, for man. And they've come up with a very long list of values. In fact, in my country, Thailand, when we were drafting out a syllabus for the education in human values, we made a list of about 100 values that we could find that is suitable for our country in Thailand. But out of all those 100 values, we can classify them under the main 5 human values. So whatever we can think of, we can always fit into one of the 5 human values that are listed in front of us here. Let us look at the first human value. And I like to spend some time on this human value. And that is truth. What is the truth? Man is somewhat misled by what is the truth. What is the real truth? Let us take, for example, and I'd like you to participate in this. First, I would like you to look at your neighbor, the person who is sitting next to you. All right, that's quite enough. So what do we see? We see beautiful faces. We see handsome faces. Is that really true? Is that the truth? Well, I happen to be a scientist, and I would like to make a statement from a scientist that what you see is an illusion. It's not really true. Why is that? How do we see? What do we use to see? Eyes. And what is the medium that can cause us to see after we use our eyes? We use light. Well, there are many scientists here, I'm sure. What kind of energy is that? I ask this at my EHV classes, and children of 12 and 14, they can answer. What kind of energy is this light? Electromagnetic waves. Very clever, very good. Yes, it is electromagnetic wave. Now, this energy has different frequencies, from the very low frequencies to the very, very high frequencies. But light is just a small part of all those frequencies. For example, when we talk about higher frequencies in light, we have ultraviolet, and we go on to the energies that are used in hospitals like X-rays, and we have even higher frequencies, all of which we cannot see. Lower than the light, we have infrared, and we have lower frequencies like microwaves that we use in communications, radio frequencies, short wave, medium wave, long wave. All these are electromagnetic waves, but we can't see them. So I'd like you to try again. Look at your neighbor. But now, suppose you're looking at each other with X-ray. So what do you see? You see some kind of skeleton. The beautiful face, the handsome face no longer exists. What is the truth? Looking at a lower frequencies. Now I'd like you to look again. All our surrounding. But this time with radio waves. Nothing. Yes. Suppose we have a radio receiver. Close all the doors. We can still receive the various stations by tuning our radio. Therefore, it means that the radio waves can come through the wall, come through the ceiling, come through the floor. And therefore, when we start looking using radio waves, the building starts to disappear. It doesn't really exist as we think. We can see straight through it. We can see a long, long way away using radio waves. So even buildings, which we think is a solid thing, is no longer solid. So, what is the truth? We are all like blind men who go to discover an elephant. One person starts feeling the tail and said, an elephant is like a rope or string. Another person goes to the leg, feel his way around the leg. He said, an elephant is like a pillar. Another person goes to the belly, start feeling the belly of the elephant. It's like a wall. And they all have an argument about it. We are like those blind men. We are looking at things and we think that what we see with our senses are real, are true. But science has shown that really it's an illusion. It's not really true. So we have to find out what is the truth. Scientists have been going around trying to discover the truth. They make research, they perform experiments, they make observations, and it's just like a circle where knowledge, what we have found out, what we have discovered by our scientists, is within the circle. And we continue our research around the circumference. We discover more things, we understand a little bit more of our nature, of our universe. So the circle expands. Circle becomes bigger and bigger. But at the same time, scientists have discovered that the circumference becomes bigger and bigger. There are many more things to be discovered. There are many more things that we don't understand. The more we understand, the more we don't understand. And there's no end to that. Nowadays, scientists become specialists. We understand just a part of our little circumference. We cannot understand everything now. So scientists have become specialists in that particular field because the circle is so big. And yet, there's so many things for us to discover, for us to do research. And there is no end. How can we understand the universe? Is there a way? Is there something that once we know and understand, we can understand everything? In the same way, man has been searching for peace and happiness. And we've been searching everywhere. We go over there, we go over here, we travel everywhere. And yet, we cannot really find true peace until finally he discovers that the peace that he has been looking for is not outside of himself, but it's right here inside us. So we're beginning to find an answer. We have to look within. We have to find something within ourselves. Maybe he can understand everything. Let me give an illustration. A few years ago, I went to the United States. At that time, I was a professor at Chulalongkorn University in Bangkok. And I found that what I was teaching was so outdated. I was teaching about microwave communications. That is the result of my education in England. And I found that what I learned at university here was already so outdated. So I had to go and find out the latest technology so that I can come back and teach my children. So I went to the United States to find a job temporarily, and they announced the Viking project, the project that we were trying to discover what is Mars. We tried to put some satellites or some rockets. We're going to send it to Mars, make a landing there, and try to send some information back. So I competed in this project. I wanted to get into the project and so learn all about the latest technology. It was quite tough to get in. It wasn't so easy because so many scientists were involved. We have to write proposals, what we're going to do. So finally I decided to choose a particular part of the Viking project, which other scientists have not been able to do up to that time. And that is, they were unable to make a soft landing on Venus, on Mercury, and Mars. Use our radio waves to control the landing. The Russians, the Americans have failed to make soft landing, except on the moon. But other planets, they have failed. Every time the satellites or the rockets went there, it made a hard landing and no signal was sent back. Just became quiet. Because there won't be many people to compete. If I chose something that's easy, I wouldn't be able to get in. So I decided to make a nice proposal based on my education at London University here. So I wrote a very nice proposal. I said I'll build this part 1 inch by 1 inch, whereas other scientists and engineers, they're saying they're going to make one 1 foot by 1 foot, and several kilos of weight. In my case, it was only 35 grams. So I beat everybody. Actually, I didn't know exactly how to do it, but I thought that, well, there's still some time to do some research. They didn't expect us to know straight away how to do it. They just want to know if we have some idea, and they're willing to spend millions and millions of dollars for us to do research. So anyway, NASA agreed to accept me into this project, and I started to do my research. I spent several months doing it. Finally I said, okay, here's the product. I gave it to them. They installed in their Viking. They didn't send it up yet. They tested it with a computer. They created a condition similar to the landing and see if it works. And they came back to me pointing the fingers at me. Your product caused me to start working very hard. I was working late up until 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, still doing my research. Finally I said, all right, try again. So they tried again. It exploded again. So I came back again. I ran out of money, but the US government at that time had a lot of money. So they said, go have some more money. So we continued. I continued for quite some time and couldn't do it. I couldn't find out ways and means of getting it to work properly. Finally, I remembered. If we think too much and we don't get the answer, the best way is not to think. So I climbed up to the top of a mountain in California, and I sat there still, started to do deep breathing, forgot all about the Viking project. I detached myself, whether it crashed or doesn't crash or what, just forget all about it. Detach myself from that project. Concentration exercises, silent sitting or meditation, whatever name you like to call it. I turn my mind inwards. And when our mind becomes still, a funny thing happens. Suddenly I say, I know the answer. And I wasn't thinking about it. I knew how to build that thing suddenly. Out of the blue, it came as an intuition. It suddenly clicked. I was very happy. I ran down from the mountain back to the labs, and I built that thing. Gave it to them. They built it, they put it in the Viking, they tested it, and they all rejoiced. They said, it works. So they asked me to build 3 for Viking 1, Viking 2, and another Viking which they kept on Earth. And then I came back to Thailand. And the 2 Vikings left for Mars, and it landed softly on Mars. The Russians couldn't make it before. The Americans couldn't make it. They decided to have a Thai to go and make it for them. And that Thai person never used any science or technology as such, but instead used the method of silent sitting, concentration exercises, calming the mind, make it still, and then intuition starts to work. And we know the answer. Inside all of us, we have this, something that is inside of us that knows, that can give us the answer. We find many scientists are like this. One of my fellow college students that you all know, Sir Isaac Newton, but he was a little bit beyond my time. But we studied at the same place. That is Trinity, Cambridge. I happened to have a room right next to his room when I was a student there. So I got a little bit of his thoughts that are left behind there. Newton, you remember how he discovered the law of gravity? When he was working hard in the laboratories, he couldn't discover anything. He couldn't think, so he decided to take a rest. He goes out for a walk, calm down his mind, make his mind still, take a rest. He went under the apple tree, apple fell down, and it clicks. It's not a process of logical thinking at that time. His mind was trying to rest, but somehow there was intuition when the mind calms down, and it works. Einstein has said the same thing, that the greatest discoveries that he made was when his mind was still. Very often we do not discover anything that is really important. If we want to discover something that is really important, we must learn to control our mind, turn inwards, and when we go inwards, we find that there is something inside of us that is the knower, knows everything inside of us. And we can use that faculty. By knowing this thing, we know everything. By finding this thing, we find peace, true peace. So what is this thing? Certainly, it cannot be our body. But there's something more than just our body. Very often in EHV classes that we have in Thailand, I'm sure in your classes too, you probably ask the children to give you that answer. You know, we ask them, please raise your right hand. So he raised the right hand. Whose hand is that? You answer immediately, my hand. Eyes, my eyes. Whose nose? My nose. My clothes. My shirt. Are you the shirt? And they said, no, they are not the shirt. They own the shirt. They use the shirt. So they've given you an answer. This is their body. It's like their shirt. But they are not the shirt. They own the shirt. They use the shirt. They use this body but they are not the body. They are something else. And that something else is what we are trying to find out now, the truth about ourselves. Many religions have talked about this truth. Take, for example, in Christianity, when somebody came along and asked, Lord Jesus Christ, where is God? He said, well, in the kingdom of heaven. And you can find this in the Bible. And where's the kingdom of heaven? Jesus answered, you cannot say it's there. You cannot say it's here. For lo, the kingdom of heaven is within you. God, who is in heaven, is within you. God is within all of us. In the Bible you will see many times, know that ye are gods. In Buddhism, the Buddha has said, know that you are Buddhas. Somehow inside of us is this knower, God, Buddha, or whatever name you like to ascribe to this thing that is in all of us. But it is here, the truth, within all of us. We can all discover this thing by turning within, by learning to detach ourselves from things that are not really true and go inwards and find the truth. Now, another definition of truth, and we should agree on this really before we continue with truth. Suppose if I said something yesterday, but today I change my mind, I say a different thing, and tomorrow I say something else. Then you would say, this man is not talking the truth. How can he changes from one moment to another? It cannot be the truth. So, when we talk about truth, if something is true now, it has to be true yesterday, and it has to be true tomorrow. Truth cannot change from one moment to another. If it's changing, then we say it's not really the truth. It may be a temporary truth, but it's not the real truth. Truth cannot change. So we must learn to separate what is changing and what is not changing. Man tries all the time to get hold of things that are changing, and that is the cause of his unhappiness. If we try to get hold of something that is not permanent, it changes, then we're disappointed. So we have to learn to discriminate. What is the truth that will not change? That will never change. We cannot get hold of things that changes. Well, our universe, we know that it's changing all the time. We talked about electromagnetic energy. But in fact, there are many other types of energy. Just pure magnetic energy, electrical energy, sound waves, we have gravitational energy, all types of energy. And also there's other more subtle energy, like energy of the mind energy, mental waves, and so on. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But if we look at the whole universe with all these types of energies, then we find that actually the universe is like an ocean of energies that changes all the time. There's nothing permanent, there's nothing still. Everything is in motion, everything is in a state of change. And yet, man tries to grasp, get hold of things that changes. And that is why we're always in a state of confusion. We cannot get hold of it. Not too long ago, I attended a seminar conference at UCLA, University of California in Los Angeles. And many professors have agreed that man is like an ocean, and we appear as waves on top of that ocean. And we think we are the waves. And that wave seems to be different from other waves. Some have a sharp crest, some have a round crest, some are fat, some are small, some are tall, some are little. They all seem to be different. But yet, the professors agreed that underneath the wave, we are ocean. And this ocean is all one, the same. It's all connected. If we delve deep within ourselves, we get to that truth that we are the ocean, that we are part of the one, the same ocean. We are not different. That is why when we go inside ourselves, into the ocean, we have the ocean of knowledge. We can tap into any mind. We can tap to any type of knowledge. We become a knower by being part of that ocean. If we understand this truth, that we are part of one life, is this. We are not really separated from each other. We are the nearest kith and kin. And if one cell in that body tries to hurt another cell within the same body, what happens? Look at those cancerous cells. They try to destroy, they try to harm other good cells in the same body. And the result is that the whole body suffers and finally dies. And even that cancerous cell cannot survive. It dies. So, if we realize this truth, that we are part of the same living entity, and that if we hit another person, we are really hitting ourselves. If we hurt another person, we are really hurting ourselves. If we perform service to others, we are serving ourselves. We are helping other people to progress. We are also progressing. But if we try to hurt, if we speak bad things about other people, if we think bad things about other people, we are doing that to ourselves only. This is the human value, the truth, so important in our life. If we understand this first value, the truth, that we are God, that we are Buddha, that we are Atman, whatever names we give, doesn't matter. But it's all the same. Therefore, we cannot not hurt anybody else. We'll follow from this truth. Because we are one, our duty is to serve, our duty is to love. The greatest commandment of Jesus, love thy neighbor as thyself, immediately becomes a fact. It's real, it's true. Because our neighbors are ourselves. Therefore, naturally, we must love our neighbor as ourselves. So other human values becomes evident when we understand this truth. So we have to teach our children to learn to turn within, find the truth within him. Then he can use his intuitive powers. He will learn to discriminate between what is true and what is not true. He will become a perfect human being. Let us now look at another human value. I'd like to talk a little bit, before I talk about the human values, about other human values, I'd like to talk about love. Love is so important in these days. We find that human beings nowadays are losing control of his emotion. It's becoming more and more evident. We have more and more anger within ourselves. We have to learn to control this anger. We don't have enough love in the world. At my university, when I was a professor at Chulalongkorn University in Bangkok, I used to go around and teach my students about love. And they said, we don't believe in love. No, we're now living in an age of science, technology, love. So I said, all right, let's prove it. Let's use science. Let's use technology. So I helped them to perform an experiment on love. Some plants, marigold. We grew about 70 marigold plants. We selected those that were equally strong. A week, we take them out from the experiment. We gave them everything in the same way, the same conditions, same amount of water for each plant. The ground, the earth that we used, we mixed well before we separated into 2 plots. Everything was equal, the conditions were equal. Then I got the students to come along and start pouring their love to one plot only. The other plot we kept as a control plot for comparison. And they start to pour their love to the plants. I told them how to pour their loves. They didn't know how to do it, but it's just a feeling. Here we try to have the same type of feeling to the plants. In the mind we think about their well-being, their growth, their joy, happiness, whatever we can think, the students try to put into their mind and have this feeling from the heart. And then we watch the experiment. We found that after a few days, and we start to measure, they were at least 50% taller. And the ones that received love, after a few days, start to have flowers, beautiful yellow flowers. Whereas the other plant, the other group, didn't have any flowers that bloomed at all. We saw a big difference. Of course, the students weren't quite happy with that yet. They said, well, we must calculate, we must have something in figures. So we measured the height of each plant from both groups. And we did a statistical analysis on it. We put them into figures. We did analysis of variance and various tests to see whether it's possible to happen in that way. Is there any probability that it will happen in that way? And when we made the calculations, it proved that it's a near impossibility. It cannot happen, but it did happen. So finally, we have to accept that there is a difference between the two plots. And what's the difference? All the conditions were identical. The only difference was that love was poured to one particular plot. So the students had to accept by scientific method that love existed, that love is an energy that can cause the plants to grow faster and better. Really works. Energy that we can use in this world. Right now, man is always afraid of other men. We're always wary. We're thinking bad things about other people. We're afraid of them. We're afraid of other people. And so we start creating weapons to defend ourselves because of our fear. One country builds the atomic bomb, so another country said, well, we must have the hydrogen bomb. So when they have the hydrogen bomb, another person said, right, we must have the neutron bomb. So when we have Star Wars, well, apart from lasers and all that, they want to create another secret weapon now to all this. And the result is quite clear. Total destruction of the earth. If we do not stop this mad race. Man has forgotten that we have the greatest weapon in our hands already, and that is love. Love is the greatest weapon. Nothing is greater. I'll give you one illustration. I think you probably have heard of this person. I learned a great deal while I was in England, when I was a student, from the teachings of this great man, and that is Paramahansa Yogananda. He was teaching in New York once and went for a walk. Suddenly he found 3 robbers, or 3 muggers they call over there. So Paramahansa Yogananda took out his purse, gave it to them, and at the same time poured out his love. Angry with anybody, so he poured this love to the 3 robbers. In his mind he's thinking, may they be well and happy. And the strange thing happened. The 3 robbers stood still and suddenly apologized. They said, we are sorry, we cannot take your money. Turned back and ran away. You see how love can create miracles. A person who has a gun on you and you start pouring love to him, he changes his mind. He cannot shoot you. He cannot harm you if you pour out your love to that person. It's a tremendous energy. You don't need another gun to defend yourself. We all have this within ourselves, this love, and we can use it in our daily life. As soon as we are awake in the morning, start pouring your love out to everybody, thinking of the whole world. May the world be happy. Start the day with love. And the whole day you go along giving out your love to everybody. Someone passes you, may he be happy. You see some plants looking a little bit bad, pour some love to that plant. You see a dog coming along, they're looking unhappy, pour your love to that dog. Spend the day with love. And before you retire to bed, sit still for a while and start pouring your love to the whole world again. End the day with love. And truly we'll find peace, happiness. Anger cannot arise when you have love in your heart all the time. Love is a tremendous weapon. It is. And it will become stronger and stronger the more we understand the truth. And the more we have love, the more peace, the more joy, the more you want to pour out your love. On the contrary, while I was performing experiments at Chulalongkorn University with my students, I found one plant suddenly died. It shriveled up and died. So I thought, well, there must have been a student cursing this plant. So I went around asking the students. Finally one boy came along, one man, he's already grown up, and he said, yes. He came one day, on a Saturday, sat in front of that plant for 3 whole hours, and the plant shriveled up and died. It's very important. He told me that after that, he was so unhappy. He had a terrible headache. He had a terrible stomachache. He felt all tired and very ill after that. Well, that is the reaction that we all get. Whatever we do unto others, we are doing unto ourselves. Why? Scientists have discovered that there is actually energy that flows through us and leave our body. When I was a student here, I visited the other place, that is Oxford. And I went to a laboratories there called the Delaware Laboratories in Oxford. Experiments were being performed by George Delaware. This energy, which he calls primary magnetic energy, he says this is a more subtle energy. And he discovered that this energy comes out from the body, comes out from the hand, and also various points in the body, like the center of our forehead. There's energy leaving this center. The heart, about 2 inches from your navel, above the navel, there's also energy. And independent research was being done by Dr. Philippi in the Netherlands at that time. Also discovered energy leaving these centers from our body, as well as aura. There's some kind of magnetic energy, which they call primary magnetic energy, that surrounds our body. So scientists are beginning to discover that there is an energy that leaves our body. So when we send out our love, this love flows through our body and goes out from the body. Therefore, when we love other people, this energy flows through us, and therefore we are loving ourselves at the same time. But when we curse another person, that energy that we use for cursing has to go through our body, and therefore we are cursing ourselves. We are hurting ourselves automatically. So please, don't curse anybody. Unfortunately, we all forget ourselves. When we are angry with another person, automatically we are sending out energy from us to that person that we are angry with. Some of us may have noticed that if we have a lot of enemies, a lot of people who are angry with us, we're always feeling there's something, a headache. When a lot of people are angry with us, we can feel this. Because there's energy that comes from them to us. With another person, we are sending out bad energy through our body to other people. They become unhappy. But at the same time, watch yourself. Look at yourself. Look at yourself at the mirror while you are angry. This will help you to stop being angry. When you look at your face while you are angry. So whenever you're angry, look at yourself. This energy is going through you and you are harming yourself. So we tend to forget about this cursing. We are doing it all the times. When we are gossiping, unfortunately, when we gossip, we tend to gossip about bad things about other people. So when we think bad things, bad energy is leaving us towards the person we are gossiping. We are actually helping that person to become worse. At the same time, when we think of some bad things, these thoughts will go into our subconscious mind, and gradually we are working ourselves into the same state that we are gossiping about. We are thinking bad things, finally we are going to be bad. A man thinks, so he is. That is very important. So please do not curse, do not be angry with anybody, do not gossip bad things, do not think bad things. All this is energy that is harming ourselves. Only think of love, full of love, the whole day. Even at night time, you should be dreaming about love and not dreaming about bad things. And it is possible to control our dream. If we have a good life, full of love, our dream will automatically follow. But if during the day we are full of confusion, our dream will also be filled with confusion. Love is a great human value, something that we have to teach our children to them. Let us look at the next human value, because we don't have too much time. I'd like to talk about peace. Man is always shouting, I want peace, I want peace. Yet we don't really find peace. How can we find peace? We said, I want peace. To be left with peace, we have to cut off I want, and then we are left with peace. Get rid of the I, get rid of the want, and then we are left with peace. My ego, my attachment to myself, the thing that makes me feel I'm bigger, better, richer, or worse, or whatever, that is our ego. We got to get rid of that ego, and we'll feel a lot happier. You know, in Christianity, Christ taught the same thing. You will not see the kingdom of heaven. What does reborn mean? When we talk about rebirth, we are naturally talking about death. But in Christianity, death means the death of our ego. And then we can be reborn again, afresh. The cross as the eye, the centerpiece, the eye. Cut the cross, clean the cross. Cut the ego, then we are reborn again. Want, the desire, the cause of all unhappiness is desire. The Buddha stated quite clearly, the cause of suffering is desire. Get rid of desire. Get rid of the I. So we are left with peace. So no need for us to shout, I want peace, I want peace. Simply get rid of I, get rid of want, and we are left with peace. What is the real enemy of man? The real enemy of man is the thing that causes confusion within us. It's the one that destroys peace within us. That is the real enemy. And we got to beat these things out of us. Beat the enemy. We have to be victorious over these enemies. What is causing or destroying our peace? Anger, greed, lust, jealousy, attachment, desires, hatred. All these things are man's enemy. It's not the other person. It's not the other country. It's not another group. But it's the enemy that is within ourselves, that we have to be victorious. We have to get rid of those enemies. How do we get rid of it? Many people say, well, it's too difficult. I can't do it. How to get rid of our anger? But if we look at nature, nature teaches us many things. Look at the sun. At night, it's dark. When the sun rises, darkness disappears. Does the sun use a lot of force? Is the sun trying to push away the darkness? No. The sun rises quietly, darkness disappears. We don't need to fight our anger. We don't need to fight our lust, our greed, our desires. In fact, psychologists have told us, don't depress these feelings. Use the idea of the sun rising. The sun has brightness, has light, and darkness disappears. Create light within ourselves, and darkness will disappear. All the bad feelings, emotions, greed, anger will disappear if we can create light. And that light is love. If we can have love within our heart, then darkness will disappear within ourselves. And values. Our heart, automatically we have light. And when we have light within ourselves, anger, lust, greed, attachment and so on will disappear. They will no longer have strength to fight us. They will not have any effect on us anymore, into our heart. That is the light. We are victorious over our true enemies, and we find peace within ourselves. So, peace is a great value. Something that we can teach our children to have peace by getting rid of I, getting rid of desires, by bringing in human values, bringing love into our heart. And then peace will be a prize for all of us. And when we have peace, all our actions will be correct. We can live a proper life because we are not in a state of confusion. When we have peace, we can perform our duty, right living, right conduct. We can have all these things. Peace is what man wants. We become truly satisfied. We don't need to grope around anymore. We don't need to go out and search everywhere for peace. So let us teach our children to find peace. Let's look at right living, right conduct. Right conduct is really love and truth that is in us, expressing itself outwards into action. In action, that is right conduct. It's how we conduct ourselves with other people, how we can live in harmony in this world, how we can be peaceful in all our actions, in all our duties. action. And we start thinking, what am I going to get from this action? But if we learn to perform action without thinking, without attaching ourselves to the results, can really be happy in our life, How can we be disappointed if we didn't want anything from our action? So, right conduct means performing our action without being attached to it. Right action means love expressed in our action. That is service to mankind. We are serving other people. We give, and give. And that's it. No more. In other words, it's not like give to me. Then that is not right conduct. Give, and be detached. And we find we are very happy and peaceful when we learn to give without wanting anything in return. Give to the people who cannot give anything back. And we find tremendous peace within ourselves. In order to have right conduct, we must understand the truth. We must have love. We must have peace. Most of us, in our action, we sometimes think, oh, we're going to help that person. We're going to help this person. When we say we're going to help other people, is it because we think we are better than they are? So we're going to help them. Or we have more education. We're clever than they are. Therefore we're going to help those who are stupid. Are we thinking that? Because if we are thinking that, we are going against right action, helping other people. What we are doing when we give service, we are helping ourselves. Of the one, everybody are our brothers and sisters. We are helping the members of our family, the cells within the same body. So, when we are doing a service, the person who is helping us is that person, not us. It's the others who's giving us an opportunity of allowing us to give service. And therefore we can advance ourselves. We can raise our consciousness. It's not because we are better or we are... then we start to build up our ego. So it's not just helping. It's service. We are the servant, not the helper. It's our duty to serve. Duty is part of our conduct, right conduct. And this is a great human value. Perform service. Perform our duty. All our actions should be performed without thinking of what we're going to get in return. Satisfied when we do that. And we can perform our job with greater efficiency. So let us teach our children this right living, right conduct. And lastly, I'd like to talk about non-violence. It's really love, peace, right action, and into one. We can only have non-violence if we truly understand the truth that we are one, that we are brothers and sisters. How can we hurt another person? When somebody else hurts us, we should think in a good way, in our mind. Control our emotion. How else can we control our emotion except through experience? When somebody is throwing abuse at us, he's helping us to control our anger. He's our teacher. He's our helper. This is listening good things from his abuse, seeing good things in all things. So we have to realize that when somebody hurts us, he's helping us. Also, immediately our first reaction should be looking at ourselves. We must be doing something wrong, otherwise he wouldn't hurt us. So we should start examining ourselves, improve ourselves, so nobody will hurt us. But at the same time, we understand the truth that we are all one. We do not hurt other people. We must have non-violence. When we have love within our heart, how can we be violent? It's impossible. So non-violence is an automatic thing. Think of others. We only give service. Service. When we have love, we are all part of the same body, same being. And there cannot be any violence. Once we learn to have peace in our mind, steady peace, then nobody can get us to become angry. Nobody can get us to become violent. It's an impossible thing if we have peace in our mind. So, non-violence includes truth, love, peace, and of course, right living, right conduct. I'm afraid that's all the time I have to talk to you about the human values. I had to spend a lot of time on truth, because that is the basic thing that we have to understand. But we can all see that the human values are the most important thing for us in these days. We have to help our children to grow with character. We have to help our children to have a better world than what we are experiencing. It is our duty as teachers to help the children have the human values in their heart so they can grow into a perfect being and have a world of peace to live in. Thank you very much.
Well, I think the applause is indicative of the value you are attached to Dr. Jomsai's address this afternoon. I am going to reserve my comments and thanks and wait to hear again our friend and brother here, Sanjeev Choudhary. At this stage, I think we should break for tea if you want one. I don't want one. I've just had tea from Dr. Jomsai. See? Now, it is a joy to me, and I believe to you all, to have these two men, one from India, who is going to address us next, Sanjeev Choudhary, and one from Thailand, whom you've just heard, Dr. Jomsai. Now I'm going to ask Sanjeev Choudhary to address us on the theme Introduction to Methodology of Education in Human Values. The concept itself has been well propounded by Dr. Jomsai, Now we are entering into the area of how we set about putting these ideas across to our children. Sanjeev Choudhary.
Sisters and brothers, I'm reminded of a remote place in Europe where a distinguished, literate, technologically trained person went for a visit. He had to go across a lake, and for going across that lake, the only mode that was available, the only medium that was available was an old-fashioned boat with a rowing facility. And there was an illiterate boatman, the only one who was in charge of that boat and who would ferry the people who would want to go to either banks to and fro. So this gentleman, he was armed with a newspaper. As many people, while they go for a journey, they may forget to take the ticket, but they do not forget to take the newspaper. So he had his newspaper on and he deposited himself comfortably into the boat. He was the only passenger. And he turned on to the sports page as the boat started rowing into the lake. And he read about the limited overs cricket match, Benson and Hedges International Trophy in Australia. And he started reading the news aloud, that this team did this team made so many runs, this was the average, this was the speed with which the ball went, and so on. And he started, as we normally do when we are traveling, we engage the person next to us, whether he likes it or not, into a conversation. And he started discussing with him that, do you think, my dear friend, the limited overs cricket match is better than a test cricket match, or 5 days match is better than this, and so on? This boatman didn't reply at all. So then he asked him, he says, are you understanding what I'm trying to say? I'm discussing something very important, something very topical. What this game is, I'm absolutely ignorant about it. Hands and said, oh my God, you do not even know what limited overs cricket is? Such a famous game? I'm sorry, my dear man, 25% of your life is downright waste. And then this illiterate person asks him, he says, I hope you can read this newspaper at least if you don't know what cricket game is about. I can't decipher, I don't know what's written on this paper. He says, oh my God, people like this still exist in this world. 50% of your life is waste if you do not know how to read. And then he felt that the light had become slightly dim. I wanted to check with him what the time would be, because normally the light shouldn't be so dim at that part of the evening or the day. And he asked him, he says, what time should it be? This boatman replies, I'm afraid, sir, I can't even read time on my watch. I don't have one. And then he said, oh gosh, 75% of your life is waste if you can't even read the time on your watch. And then he gave up. And as the boat went a little further, this literate man felt something cold touching his feet. And he looked down. The bottom of the boat had developed a hole through which water had started coming in. And he looked at the boatman, and the boatman, with a very innocent face, asked him a simple question. He said, sir, do you know how to swim? He said, no, I do not know how to swim. He says, I'm afraid your 100% life is waste. Sisters and brothers, we may have all the knowledge about everything unless we know how to swim across successfully through this turbulent atmosphere, through this crisis-ridden world that we have been bequeathed. We wouldn't be able to swim across this world successfully. All the knowledge, all the literature, all the technology won't stand by our side unless we have the ability to swim across education in human values. I'm also reminded of something that happened a little while ago in Soviet Union. Familiar with his name, most of you? He was a very eloquent speaker. And his lifelong obsession was to tell the illiterate people in the far-flung villages of Russia that what it means to be in touch with science, what it means to be in touch with technology, and we must imbibe as much science, as much technology, as much knowledge as we can. And one day, in a remote village in Ukraine, state of Soviet Union, Maxim Gorky was addressing a conference, a seminar, a meeting of peasants, farmers. And he was telling them, my dear brothers, this is the age of science, this is the age of technology. It is with the blessing of science, it is with the miracle of science that man can fly in the air like birds, as Dr. Art was telling us, even conceive landing on Mars with the Viking. It is again with the blessing of science that man can swim in the water like fish, submarines and so on. It is with the blessing of science that man can do this. It is with the miracle of science that man can do that. Science has taught man this, science has taught man that. And as he was going on in his flow, a seemingly foolish-looking person sitting right in the end stood up and said, "Sir, may I ask you a question?" All eyes were focused on the person in the end. Maxim Gorky said, "What is your question? Please do ask." He said, "Sir, I agree with you that science has taught man how he can fly in the air like birds, how he can swim like a fish in water. But I'm afraid science has not taught man how he can live like a man on this earth. We can do what birds do. We can do what fish do. More often than not, we can do everything that any animal does. But we cannot do what is truly the destiny of man." There is a story in Philippines. With this short story, I'll come straight to the subject. Go to the various departments of his empire to see what is happening. He would go to a prison, he would go to a hospital, he would go to a school. And he went to a school and he found that the teacher was teaching small children of age 10, 12, 13. And the teacher was teaching them biology. It belongs to some or the other kingdom. There is this metal that belongs to the kingdom of minerals. There is this parrot that belongs to the kingdom of birds. There is this dog that belongs to the kingdom of animals. And finally, the teacher, summing up the chapter, made the crowning statement, "And dear children, man is a mammal and belongs to the kingdom of animals." Scientifically, it is correct. Man does belong to the kingdom of animals. Moving on, and he respectfully asked the teacher that if he could find out from the students whether they have understood the message, they have understood the lecture. It shouldn't be that one keeps on speaking and the other doesn't follow. So the king came in the front and said, "Dear children, I'll ask you some questions. Please reply to the best of your capacity or whatever you understood." He took out his sword from his scabbard that was a part of his regal dress and said, "To which kingdom does this sword belong?" They all raised their hand and said, "Your Majesty, this sword belongs to the kingdom of minerals, the kingdom of metals." "To which kingdom does that crow that is announcing its arrival on that small tree belong?" "Your Majesty, this crow belongs to the kingdom of birds." "To which kingdom does this horse which I rode to come to your school belong?" "This horse belongs to the kingdom of animals." And then the king asked the question, "To which kingdom do I belong?" There was a pin-drop silence in the class. Who would dare to stand up and tell the king that you are just an animal? You belong to the kingdom of animals. Give the answer that she had taught 5 minutes ago. And in that eerie silence, one little girl stood up and said, "Your Majesty, may I answer this question? To which kingdom do you belong?" The king said, "Child, yes, please do answer." And she said, "Your Majesty, you belong to the kingdom of God." It is not only that king that belongs to the kingdom of God. Each of us inherits the kingdom of the Supreme. And that education, which does not explore, unearth, scoop out the potential of a human being. I'm reminded of a very devastating statement made by a very distinguished vice chancellor of a university in Asia. I hope it is incorrect to every word of it. He said, "Today, there is only one difference between a lunatic asylum and a university. And the difference is that spending 16 years in a lunatic asylum, the person that comes out shows some improvement. Spending 16 years in a university, the person that comes out shows no improvement. The education that cannot teach us how we can withstand the challenges of life, how we can withstand the problems of life, how we can love and live together. As that quotation on the left says, character development is evidenced in the way a person behaves when confronted with conflict. And we are all the time, every moment being confronted with conflict. At this point of time, let us understand that education in human values is not a separate subject. We aren't talking of introducing another subject, nearly a box load of books, 5 million books they carry in nursery class. We aren't introducing another subject. Education in human values is not a subject, but it is the purpose of life. If we were to define what education in human values means in 3 words, we could say education in human values, the definition of education in human values is blossoming human excellence. Human values and blossoming human excellence. The purpose of education is blossoming. The second quotation on your left, on my left here. Education is a slow process like the opening of a flower. The fragrance becomes deeper with the silent blossoming of each petal. The purpose of education is to blossom the personality of a child, blossom the personality of a being. And values stand for excellence. If one were to define what human values are, we have at this point of time, working on this syllabus of education in human values, been able to construct a definition of human values. Are the focal points of perfection in a human personality. Values are not ethereal. Values do not fall from heavens. Values are something they are absolutely tangible, achievable by any human being. In the morning, we heard brilliant discourses on world religions. What was the conclusion? The religions may seem to differ in their content, but the essence of each religion is that unless a human being is able to imbibe these 5 values, the process of being and becoming is not complete. In other words, if one were to make a mathematical statement out of the world religions and human values, one could say that the human values are the highest common factors as well as the least common denominators of the world religions. And if one were to go a little deep into mathematics, there is only one number which can be both the highest common factor and the least common denominator, and that number is 1. Because they deal with the unit, and that unit is man, a segment, a fragment of the composite being that the Supreme stands for. The essence of world religions is human values. We must satisfy ourselves on one more count. Have put all these values into 5 major segments, 5 basic human values. Why are they 5 in number? Why not 6? Why are they human, and why do we call them values? This we must satisfy. I would draw your attention to this transparency. Human personality and human values. This is a sketch of a man. Each of us has a physical body. The first identification, if I were to ask you what your name is, the name is associated with the physical body. But each of us, besides a physical body, is also equipped with another very interesting apparatus called the intelligence. There is not a single being in this universe who does not have intelligence. Intelligence is there in everyone. Therefore, the first domain of human personality, the second domain of human personality is the intellectual domain of human personality, which is related to our brain, the functioning of our brain, intellect or intuition or whatever you may call. That's the intellectual domain of human personality. The physical domain and the intellectual domain. Each of us has also got a combination, a set of emotions in us. At times we are angry, at times we are happy, at times we are irritated, at times we are appointed, at times we are disappointed. Each of us has emotions, and that is the emotional domain of our personality. There is not a single person in this world who does not have emotions. We may have a combination of emotions, a variety of emotions, but all of us do have emotions. There is yet another domain of our personality which is called the psychic domain of personality. The psychic, which is related to the human psyche. And what does this domain of personality mean? Dr. Art beautifully brought out that the psychic domain of human personality is the answer to one question. And what is that question? When I make a statement, or when you make a statement, that I love so and so person, what in me loves what in him? So and so, I love X. What in me loves what in X? If my physical body loves the physical body of X, we should continue to love each other even when both of us are dead, because it is the physical body that we are trying to identify with love. We can never love with our physical body. Physical body is incapable of loving. We cannot even love with our intellect. We can admire, one intellect can admire another intellect. One intuition can be proud of another intuition, can appreciate another intellect, but we can never love with the intellectual apparatus that we have. And we must shed off this misbelief that love is an emotion. Love is not an emotion. Emotion essentially means there is a crescendo, descendo, ascendo, descendo. There is always a fall. There is never a constancy of emotions. Perhaps better than most people, when in his beautiful sonnet, True Love, he says, love is not love that alters when alteration it finds. That any obstruction comes, somebody says something, and the love is, we keep the love in our pocket and say that I stop loving you from this moment. Love is an energy that flows like the power of sun, like the radiance of sun. It's not an emotion, but an energy. It is a quantum, it's a force that travels from one individual to another individual. And the source of that energy in a human system is the psyche, soul, or the resident divinity within. One may call it by any name, but the center, the fountainhead of love in human personality is the psychic domain of personality, which is the fourth level of our personality. Must understand, and that is the spiritual domain of personality. Beyond our psyche also. When we realize that we have a relation with everything in this universe. Why? We have a relation with air, with the air that we breathe. We have a relation with the water that we consume. We have a relation with the fire. We have a relation with earth, of which this universe is made up of. Earth, water, fire, air, and ether. These five basic things of which this entire universe is made up of. And so have a direct relation with anything which is made up as a combination of these five things, which includes everything, which includes every human being, which includes every plant, which includes every animal, which even includes any conglomeration of atoms, be it a table, be it a chair, be it a microphone, be it a pen. We have a relation with everything. Because at the atomic level, if one were to go, the essence of atomic physics is that when it comes to atoms, we are all same. And when one realizes that this is the spiritual dimension, the universal dimension of one's existence, this is the spiritual domain of personality. In other words, each person in this universe has these five domains of personality. There is none that does not have five, and there is none that has six. Everything is consumed and defined by these five. And the purpose of education is to achieve excellence at all these five levels. Today, we can develop the physical body of a student. We can develop the intellect of a student, but not to the point of it going or graduating into the level of intuition. We can even slightly train the vital or emotional part. We are not fully able to train the emotional part. We are not able to touch the psyche at all, and never even able to imagine the existence of the spiritual domain of personality, which is perhaps the most important component of human personality, which has to be developed through the process of education. The purpose of education, when we said, is blossoming human excellence. And when we define values as the focal points of perfection in a human personality, what it means is that our educational system must be capable of developing each of these five domains of personality, and these five values represent perfection at these five levels. It is for this reason that we call them basic, because they are an integral part of human being. It is for this reason that we call them human values, because you cannot conceive of a human being, you cannot think of a human being unless you think of these five aspects of personality. The perfection is represented by the value of truth. The purpose of intellect, as Dr. Art beautifully brought out, what do we use our intelligence for? To find out, why does this happen, why does that happen? We wish to find out the truth of everything. And that is the intellectual perfection, which represents and manifests in a personality as the value of truth. Similarly, at the physical domain of human personality, what do we use our body for? We use our body to act. Every person uses his body to act. Conduct has excellence. The value that manifests in the personality is the value of righteous living, or the value of righteous action, or the value of righteous conduct, whatever name you may like to call it by. The third level of personality is the emotional domain of personality. The value of peace is always attained at the level of emotions. This is one thing that we must think about. When we say we want peace, what is it? What is in us that wants peace? If it is our body that wants peace, then we get peace only once when we are carried to the cremation or the burial ground. We are in perfect peace. If it is our intellect that wants peace, it means we are incapable of thinking. We are duds. It's a very peaceful intellect. Peace is always wanted at the level of emotions. It is the emotional equilibrium of a person, that whatever be the situation, it is like a physical balance. When we teach the physical balance in an elementary school, we teach the properties of that balance by saying that balance has stability, balance has sensitivity, and this balance has the property that whenever its equilibrium is disturbed, whenever anything external happens, it comes back to its mean position at the earliest. Whatever may happen, the individual does not have to lose his poise. If he loses his poise, there is something basically wrong, and the education has not been complete. Therefore, it is the training of emotions, it is the stability that is achieved in emotions, and peace represents the emotional perfection of a human being. Similarly, the value of love is represented by perfection at the psychic domain of human personality. When that fountain of love, which Dr. Art was mentioning, is felt, this fountain flows out in all directions, all four directions, unrestrained. It is a cascade that takes and envelops everything that comes into its fold. And finally, the value of non-violence is represented by spiritual perfection. Perfection at the spiritual level. Must succeed in touching all these 5 domains of human personality and achieving excellence at all these 5 levels. If our present system of education, we can positively say, is able to achieve this, we need not inject anything new. An integrated personality which has, it is not that one achieves perfection overnight. It's a voyage that one undertakes during one's lifetime. But have the seeds for that voyage been planted or not? We may be expecting a crop of apples in our field, but we may not have planted the seeds of apple. All that we may have planted is lemons. And if we expect apples, we would never get apples. In other words, the value education is like planting those seeds which will sprout and blossom into a shady tree in due course of time, giving completeness to the personality of an individual. This is the intention of the program of education in human values. Now we come down to what this flowchart of this program is. Education in human values course structure. Because the next question is, if these 5 values are desirable and these 5 values must find home, must find a place in the personality of every child, how can this be achieved in school? Obviously, the teacher cannot go and lecture in the class about truth, lecture in the class about righteous conduct. We wouldn't achieve anything by lecturing. It has to be in a very beautiful, strategic manner, injected in the personality of the child through various sets of techniques and through various combinations of techniques. What exactly is that is shown in this flowchart. First of all, we said that these 5 human values have 2 things as their origin. One is the human personality. They represent the essence, the perfection of human personality. And the second thing is that they are the essence of world religions. Take any religion, there is no religion that says that these 5 values should not be imbibed and inculcated by a person. So much so, with your permission, I may be allowed to give a mathematical equation between these 5 values and the world religions. And that is, if you may like to note it down, There are 5 values: truth, righteous conduct, love, peace, non-violence. Let us put a sign of plus in between all of them. That is truth plus righteous conduct plus peace, plus love plus peace plus non-violence. I repeat, truth plus righteous conduct plus love plus peace plus non-violence. What is this equal to? This is equal to God. If this is not equal to God, I am prepared to make the statement that God does not exist in this universe. Therefore, if any religion says that it does not talk about these values, it is not a religion. It may be anything else, but not a religion. The sum total of all human values in this universe is nothing but God. And God is what? Human manifesting goodness, godliness in every act, in every breath, in every iota of that personality. Therefore, we must clearly understand that this whole concept of education in human values cuts across all the boundaries or domains of all the religions and reflects the highest human aspiration that anyone can achieve. One may or may not believe in God, one may or may not believe in any religion, but there is not a single person who does not believe in perfection. Who doesn't want perfection? A cobbler, a barber, a driver, a teacher, a philosopher, a scientist, a prime minister, everybody wants perfection. All these 5 domains of personality. The significance of all these 5 values, I would just speak a sentence about all of them, more as a review than as a repetition. Truth, as Dr. Art told us, truth is, if one were again to put it in the form of a mathematical equation, life minus death is equal to truth. The difference between a living person and a dead person is the truth. Because if the person is not living, we are really talking of nothing. The power with which the heart beats, the power with which the lungs breathe, the power with which the eyes see, the power with which the ears hear is the truth which is present in us as a quantum of energy with which we live. This truth is nothing but the life energy that sustains us all. And we know at the level of energy, we are not different. This energy is indivisible, indestructible. That is why there is a quotation there, truth cannot change or cease to be. Truth is eternal. It's like that light that can never extinguish, because the essence of that light is energy, which is present in every component of this universe. Righteous conduct, as Dr. Art explained, is truth in action. Truth in action is righteous conduct. If one is able to understand a very important distinction, we are endowed with 2 kinds of things. One is our desire and the other is our will. One is the desire and the other is the will. The will is always guiding us towards perfection and righteousness. The desire always takes us away more often than not, unless it is in the form of will, away from perfection, away from righteousness. I will, it's my will. I want my willpower to be in me that I must speak the truth. But it is the desire to achieve a short-term benefit that I utter the lie or I speak the untruth. Therefore, this war between the will and the desire always continues in a human being. And if the person can develop the ability to rely more on will rather than desires, which are based on miscalculated assumptions and preconceived notions, then the child has every possibility of being led to the domain of righteous conduct. How do we develop willpower in a child? It's basically the difference between the capability of 2 individuals is the difference between the willpower to achieve. One has the will to achieve it and the other does not have the will to achieve it. He gives way. I mean, he's not the King Bruce who wouldn't care how many times he's failed. He must succeed, come what may. Therefore, righteous conduct represents cultivation of some basic social, ethical, and moral skills, social skills, self-help skills, and ethical skills in a child. Reliant, be capable of operating in an equilibrium position in society, and be capable of exercising the ethics of the human system that are a part of him. Very, very small things, in fact, you could call them trifle. The way you talk, the way you walk, the way you sleep, the way you eat, the way you comb your hair, the way you keep your room clean, the way you keep your books, the way you keep your shoes. And it is for this reason that it is said that trifles lead to perfection, but perfection itself is no trifle. The sum total sigma trifles is perfection, but perfection itself is no trifle. So in a child, to develop the capability of having these elementary skills is the first step in enabling that child to proceed towards righteous conduct. Similarly, the value of peace is not inert or vegetative, that you sit quietly and let things go over your head. No. Peace means the state of equipoise, the state of dynamic equilibrium. Peace means when you try your best, when you do your best, and you don't care what the results are going to be, because you have already done your best. Peace is when you have given out your best to the point that you can't do it any better. If we wish to have world peace that everybody talks about, we must realize that that peace has to emanate from each of us. The Charter of United Nations, in fact UNESCO starts with this: wars arise in the minds of men, so does peace. And it is there that we have to erect the edifice of peace. It is in the mind of every single individual. Unless there is peace, there can be no world peace. And for that, the responsibility of every single person is as much as that of President Reagan or Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. Each of us is responsible for the world peace in similar situation. And that is why I am always reminded of our good friend George Bernard Shaw when he used to say, "Why, fool, you must think of improving the whole world. Why, fool, you must think of improving the whole world. Improve yourself, and there will be one fool less in this world." We have to start with ourselves. That equipoise, that balance has to come. That if love can have an effect on a lower form of life such as plants, what impact can love have if the teacher is able to practice that love, to live that love on the children? I made a very interesting observation that each of us in our lifetimes is taught by maybe 200 or 250 teachers. We've been taught in class 1, class 2, grade 3, grade 4, standard 5, standard 6, university by maybe 200 to 50, 300 teachers all of us have been taught by. But how many of these teachers do we remember? 4, 5, 6, 10 maybe. Why is it that we remember them? We remember them because their personalities made a significant impact on us. We remember them because they had their selfless love which they felt for us. And it is here that the role of teacher comes into being. Teacher is the builder of a nation. Teacher is the builder of the destiny of mankind. If teacher flows with love, the children will always get enveloped into it. They'll always get embraced into it. And the impact of the personality of the teacher on the child will be indelible and become a permanent part of the being of the child. Similarly, at the level of non-violence, the value of non-violence, as Dr. Art had explained, has two dimensions. Non-violence in relation to living beings, and non-violence in relation to elements of nature. Non-violence in relation to living beings mean that we must not deliberately hurt anything. At this point, let us be very clear that absolute non-violence is impossible. In the very process of our breathing, we are destroying millions of microorganisms every second of our life. When we walk, we trample on millions of things, millions of bacteria, millions of germs. So there can be no absolute non-violence. What non-violence means is that we use our discrimination to inflict minimum violence for our existence. That is, if we can possibly live only on air and water, let us not destroy even the plant life. If the situation so warrants that we can live only on plants, let us not destroy the animal life which is so close to us. If we cannot, if the plant life is not available, then there is no choice. If you must live, you have to destroy the next form of life that comes into. That's why at a certain point of time man starts eating man, because life always subsists on life. Life always subsists on life. For our life, we have to destroy life. But the discrimination, the value of non-violence means that we inflict minimum injury, minimum violence, minimum destruction for our own existence, depending upon what the situation is. Consider the elements of nature. Non-violence means non-violation of the balance of the universe. We must not waste water. We must not waste fire. We must not waste energy. It's nothing but non-violence. Even a small elementary thing as wasting water is an act of violence. Let's conceive of a situation when we are lying in a desert and our throat is parched. Just a few segments of life left in us. At that point of time, a good Samaritan, a good person comes and with his flask puts a few drops of water on our parched tongue. What happened? And start walking as if nothing had happened. Now if we ask ourselves a question, at that point of time, who gave us the life? Water. Those few 2-3 drops of water gave us the life. And who gives us life? God gives us life. So God is nothing, but water is nothing but a personification, a manifestation, an element of God Himself. Therefore, whether it is air, or it is earth, or it is water, or it is fire, or it is space, non-violation of the balance of this is what is meant by the value of non-violence. It is for this reason that we have in every university the subject of environment today, the subject of ecology. We are talking of ecology. We are talking of growing more forests. We are talking of more greenery. We are talking of curbing pollution because we are distorting the balance of universe. The moment we inflict any harm on nature, like good third law of Newton, nature retaliates to us in form of some harm. Because if we have inflicted harm on water, there is 80% water in us. What will happen to that 80% water? We do not know. What form of ailment, what form of disease it takes place. I don't know how scientific it is to think in those terms. But every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. And if we inflict any disequilibrium, any disturbance on the balance of universe, it has the quid pro quo. It has the equal impact on our own being. Thus, for a teacher, it is important to understand that these are the 5 values which the process of education must imbibe. What is it that a teacher can do in a school? Because school is the place where this value education must take place. You cannot give an alibi today that a child spends, as Mr. Shah was mentioning in the morning, 14% of the time or 15% of the time in the school, the rest of the time is spent at home or in the society. What can you do in those 14% time? A teacher can pretty well ask this question. But the options are very clear. If the child is being taught values in home, very good. If the child is not being taught values in home and society, it is compounded evil. By the very process of teaching values or helping the students to learn values in the school, at least at some point we are short-circuiting that vicious circle into which the life of the child is involved, with the hope that this vicious circle will change into a circle of virtue, will change into a circle of values. And it is for this reason that a beautiful definition of value is also given. Value is like a valve. You replace the word U, letter U, with the letter V. And what is it that a valve does? We know the property of a valve is that anything that goes in once is not allowed to come out. It only permits one-way traffic. So if at any point of our life a value can come into our character, into our personality, it acts as a valve and sheaths us and ensures us and protects us against all the likely damage that is going to come because we stay by that value. And it is here that we have to also understand that we cannot think of a human being who is fully developed in his truth but is not developed in peace, righteous conduct and love and non-violence. When we are talking of human body, we are talking of, because human body is the best example of integration that can be seen or thought of. We are walking barefoot on ground and a thorn pricks us into the foot. What is it that cries? Is it the foot that cries, or is it the nose that cries, or is it the eyes that cry? It is the eyes that immediately start crying. He tries to take out that thorn. It cannot be that the hand goes on strike and says that I can't help you. It's the foot that's been pricked, I can't do anything about it. The whole human body is always prepared to help any other part, any other component, so that no harm comes. And when we are talking of values, any input that goes into any part of the personality of a child, it will result in blossoming of all the 5 domains of personality. And you go to a doctor, and the doctor says that I'll have to give you an injection. Now where does he give the injection? Certainly not in the head. That would be the last injection if he were to do so. The injection is either given in the arm, or in the leg or in certain portion which is capable of receiving that injection. So the ailment may be in any part of the society, in any part of the personality of the child. Education in human values injection has to be given to the child in the form of 3 separate sets of inputs. It is there that the role of school, the role of teacher comes into being. Your attention to the overhead again, please. Can we have the lights off? Can you see it from the end? Is that better? Here we have said that there are 3 ways in which the value education can take place in a school. First are the first set that you see, silent sitting or tuning in, prayers, quotations, thought, group singing, storytelling, group activities. These are what are called the direct teaching techniques. The direct teaching techniques. In addition, there are 2 more. One is integration of values into the text curriculum. This is the second way of going about value education. And third is integration of values in co-curricular activities. Integration of values into co-curricular work, if I'm not obstructing the vision there. Integration of values into co-curricular work. Now, if we can understand how a combination of these 3, what exactly is the inner significance of these 3, and how a teacher can use these 3 to have value education in the school, to enable the personality of a child to blossom, the purpose of education in human values would be to a large extent served. These 5 sets of teaching techniques, direct teaching techniques, if we could spend a couple of minutes on each of them. Dr. Art made a beautiful reference to silent sitting. Silent sitting, what does that mean? It only means sitting silently. Now, all of you are presumably sitting silently. Can I say that all of you are doing silent sitting? No? Why not? You are all sitting silently. Which is this silence that we are talking about? If we can understand that, perhaps we can say whether we are doing silent sitting or not. Now, you may be sitting now, apparently silently, but you may be thinking that when will this fellow stop speaking and when will I go home? He is boring us beyond redemption. And somebody must be thinking that my husband has not yet come. He was supposed to pick me up at 5:30. I hope his car is not hurt in the way. The mind is talking. We are not talking through the mouth. We are not being heard by our neighbors, but we are hearing ourselves. In fact, there is an orchestra, a combination of thoughts that we are being confronted with within ourselves. So what is it that we mean by silent sitting? Silent sitting means, it can be explained by the analogy of a transistor. If we have a transistor, let us tune in BBC 1, station 1 at full volume, and some music will start blaring out from there. Now let us start reducing this volume to the point that volume becomes almost zero, but we do not put the transistor off. I repeat, reduce the volume to such an extent that it becomes almost zero, so that it can't be heard, but you do not put the transistor off. Now if a question is asked, are the battery cells, when the volume is zero, not being consumed? Or are they? In fact, the science of physics tells us that the difference of consumption of the energy that comes through battery is very minimal, whether the transistor is at full volume or it is at zero volume. We are like transistors where our volume has been reduced to zero, but that consumption of energy which should be conserved is going on, that's being spent when we are talking to ourselves. Silent sitting means enabling the child to put all his thoughts to an end, so that no wastage of that energy, no wastage, there is no noise that is within. There is absolute stillness and silence. It is in that stillness and silence that the intuition in a child comes up. As Dr. Art designed that 1 by 1 module of the Viking. Please reflect on those beautiful lines of Lake poet Wordsworth in the famous poem Daffodils, when he says, "For oft when on my couch I lie, in a vacant or a pensive mood, they flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude, and then my heart with pleasure fills, and dances with the daffodils. For oft when on my couch I lie in a vacant or a pensive mood, they flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. What is to be understood here is that for seeing we do not need our eyes. In fact, the best things are seen when our eyes are closed. Silence has two aspects. Silence has the aspect of sound, and silence has the aspect of vision. Silence has the aspect of sound, and silence has the aspect of light. When the person is able to develop the capability of sitting silently, they flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude, and then the heart with pleasure fills. Uncalculable, immeasurable joy comes in when that state of silence is achieved. Why must a child be taught to sit silently? When we teach a child to sit silently, we are achieving two values directly. One is we are enabling the process of intuition to develop in a child. If the child can have awakened a stirred up intuition, the capability to draw upon his intuition, his level of intellectual perfection would be more than the child which does not have this. The difference between the capability of two people in this world, in this life, is the difference between the capability of their intuitions. A more successful businessman is he who is able to see in one situation what the other person cannot see. That's his intuitive power as far as business is concerned. The intuitive power as far as the life is concerned is what we are talking about. And if we wish to have intellectual excellence, if we wish to create good scientists, good poets, above all good human beings, we must enable the capacity of intuition to build up in this child, which can only be developed through silent sitting. The second, the voice of eternal, that the voice of divinity can be heard. And that means the voice of peace. There's a beautiful concept called the sound of silence. It's something contradictory. It is the sound of silence, beauty of this life. To be able to hear sound when there is no sound, when there is perfect silence. It is like if we keep a piece of paper underneath the sun, nothing will happen. But if you bring a lens in between the sun and the paper, what will happen? The paper gets burned. The rays of sun have converged through that lens and have developed the power and capability, the heat and energy to burn that paper. This paper is like a problem that we have. If we wish to have a solution to that problem, whatever be the nature of that problem, we have to have a lens with which we can focus all the energy that we have, concentrate all the power that we have to solve that problem, and that lens is nothing but the process of silent sitting. You could call it by any name. You could call it tuning in, because what you're doing is you're tuning in the thoughts that are going into all directions inwards. And you also could call it meditation if you so like, but we suggest that you avoid the use of this word, because many wars have been fought in this world in the name of words. What I understand by meditation, to some person meditation means standing on head and thinking of something. To another person it means lying down and thinking. So what we are saying is silent sitting, because children must sit in their classes. Obviously you can't keep them standing throughout. If it is standing, let it be silent standing. One doesn't lose anything. But if they are sitting in the class, what the teacher can do is, before the class starts, before he starts any lecture, just have 1 minute of silence. Just have 60 seconds of silence. We aren't talking of 60 minutes of silence. Nobody can have that. 60 seconds of silence, what will be achieved? If the children are too small, if they're very young children, they may not be able to sit silently. So what the teacher can do is, the teacher can paint a verbal picture in front of them. Think of the fragrance of that rose. Think of the joy that that rose gives. Think of a river. Think of a plant. Think of a bird. Let them think. When we are talking, when we are enabling their imagination to blossom, that picture of a rose, that picture of a plant, that picture of a bird is going to come into their inner eye. And that is what the seed of silent sitting means. If the child has tasted the joy of the silent sitting, then whether you like it or not, he would on his own accord start practicing that silent sitting, because you've enabled you've fired that dynamite into him, which will give him that power, and it will implode and explode in all directions. In fact, they say silent sitting is the only process which is both endothermic and exothermic. It generates heat, it gives heat, it exits heat, it inputs heat from all directions. Heat means energy. Therefore, it is specially recommended. But no teacher can ask the students to do silent sitting unless he or she practices silent sitting himself. I cannot ask you to do anything. I cannot put my children through a class of silent sitting or through 1 minute of silent sitting for which I do not need anybody's permission. In fact, if we can achieve 1 minute of silence in the class, the principal, the headmaster, the vice chancellor will start thinking highly of us. Because silence is what is absent in the institutions, and silence is what should be found in those institutions. The teacher must practice the silent sitting at his or her own home for 1 minute every day, 2 minutes every day, 2 minutes morning, 2 minutes evening, as many times as you can. In fact, there is a very famous Shinto Japanese saying which says that it's an address to the parents, it's an advice to the parents, that if you cannot bequeath to your children cars, does not matter. If you cannot bequeath to them money, it does not matter. If you cannot leave for them a house, it doesn't matter. But leave with them this habit of silent sitting. If you leave with them this habit of silent sitting, they will find all the wealth, all the treasure of this world in that mass of silence that they would have accumulated. It is the strength. Silence is the strength behind all speech. Silence is the strength behind all speech. And even when he was pestered to give a reply, he said, if you cannot understand my silence, you cannot understand my speech. Silence is more, they say speech is silver and silence is golden. It goes a step beyond. Silence, it doesn't mean that we are dumb, we are like sheep, we are like cattle. Silence means somebody who is aware of his strength. There's a very interesting saying, there's a very interesting story that is accredited to the famous Indian saint Swami Vivekananda. Once there was a pregnant lioness who saw a herd of cattle in a forest, and she pounced upon that herd of cattle. And in the process of pouncing, that little lion cub got delivered, and the lioness died. That herd of sheep, and it started living with those sheep. The sheep gave a lot of love to that small little lion, and that lion also started eating grass like sheep. It started bleating like sheep. It started doing everything like sheep. It lived with sheep. It became a part of sheep. One day, a huge lion came into that forest, and when that lion saw this herd of cattle, this herd of sheep, it started chasing them, and they all ran away. And this lion saw that there is a lion in that herd of sheep which is also running away out of fear for that bigger lion. So he started wondering, why is this lion behaving like a sheep? So he caught hold of that lion, dragged him to a river, and made that small lion look at his reflection in the water, in this clear stream of that river. And what did that baby lion see? That he looks very much like the bigger lion. And then the bigger lion roared, and Swami Vivekananda says, the smaller lion also roared. The teacher is like a lion. Out of circumstances, out of this vicious situation that is prevalent in our society today, the child has become like a cattle, like a herd of sheep being driven as if mounted on a machine. The teacher enables the child to realize that he is not a sheep. He is not a part of or a herd of the cattle. He is lion. He is the mightiest. In him lies the real force, in him lies the real energy, which can only be scooped out through processes like silent sitting. Therefore, a teacher must practice. In fact, the single most important outcome of this conference should be that if each of us who have not experienced the joy of this silent sitting can take a resolve that, and it doesn't really require time, 1 minute a day, 2 minutes a day, we must practice silent sitting and introduce silent sitting in each class of our schools. The second teaching technique, direct teaching technique, is prayers or quotation or thought. Why do we need this? To which value does that lead? Just as silent sitting leads to the value of truth, the value of peace, prayer or thought or quotation, whichever name, if there are certain countries who have allergy to the use of word prayers. It doesn't matter, it's not the word that's important. The rose will be as fragrant, whatever name you call it by. Prayer or a quotation or a thought. The intention is that we enable the child to concentrate upon something that is ennobling, something that is good, something that can weave an imagination into him. All quotation has been given. That's the prayer. That's also a prayer. Try and try again until the goal is reached. That's a thought, that's a quotation, that's a prayer. There are three things that happen when we use the medium of prayers. Prayers, for instance, many schools have got morning assemblies in many countries. And in that morning assembly, prayer is an essential part of the morning assembly. Please let not that prayer be reduced to a mechanical verbal gymnastic. Prayer has got all the strength, it has got all the power, it's as powerful as silent sitting is. In fact, prayer means we are making a petition to someone who we believe in, who we have faith in, who we believe gives us everything. I am reminded of a very beautiful small story of the famous Mughal emperor of India, whose name was quoted in the morning, Akbar. There was a very poor person who wanted some help from the emperor, who would come to see him. So this poor person also went to the court or to the palace of the emperor and knocked his door. And instead of the emperor, who normally used to come out to ask what does the person need, his deputy or his personal secretary came out. And he told that poor person, "Sir, you would have to wait. Akbar, the king, is saying his prayers in the mosque." So on hearing this poor man started laughing. And hearing his loud laughter, the king came out of the mosque and asked him, "Sir, why is it that you are laughing like a mad person?" Asks Akbar. He says, "I have done a folly, the equivalent of which has not been done by any person in this world." He says, "But what is it that you've done?" He says, "I have come to ask a favor from some person who is himself asking for every favor from someone else. He is praying to God, may my empire remain intact, may my kingdom remain intact." The Prime Minister continuously prays that next election I must win, that my party, the Conservatives must not defect into Labour Party and Labour must not defect into Conservatives. Everybody is continuously praying. So what do we achieve when we go and beg any person? In fact, the concept of strikes is an insult to the dignity of man. The countries, the democracies of this world are riddled with strikes. If we want that the younger generation, that the generation that is coming up does not take up to this white antish evil of strikes, that power, that resilience has to be built up, that if I must ask anything, if I must need anything, if I must want anything, let me not go and beg anyone who is as imperfect as I am. If I must ask something, I must ask from God only. So that thought, that quotation will improve the memory of the child. You can check with the children after some days whether they remember that quotation or not, whether they remember that thought or not. When the memory increases, the child is led to truth, because that's a component of truth. When the feeling behind that quotation, the feeling behind that prayer increases, the child is led to peace and love. He feels that love and kinship with the prayer, with the thought, with the quotation. It also leads to righteous conduct, because every prayer has a message. And that message is that we must be righteous in our actions. It also leads to non-violence, because we never pray for violence. We always pray for peace. We always pray for happiness. We never pray that I alone should have peace. God give peace to me, my wife, my son, his wife, us four and no more. That's the prayer of no person. The prayer of every person is that let the whole world be happy, let the whole world be joyous and peaceful. And that is also achieved through this process of quotation or prayer. The third thing is, which is very important, group singing. I may be allowed to disrupt this transparency for a while and draw your attention to something, a bit of medical science now. It says the dynamic equilibrium of human personality implies the following at a physiological plane. If we want equilibrium in our life, what does that mean medically speaking? Medically speaking, it means each of us has a breath. We all breathe. And whenever we feel good in our life, whenever we feel nice in our life, if you observe yourself, you will find that there is a rhythm in the breath. The breath reads, the breath goes on, the process of breathing goes on in a very beautiful rhythm. It can never be that you are feeling nice and your breath is going haphazard, haywire, being derailed. Whenever you feel nice, whenever you feel good, the breathing will be in a particular rhythm. Whenever we are in a state of peace, goodness and happiness, the heartbeat will be stable. The beating of the heart will again be rhythmic, it will be very, very stable. It can never be that we are feeling good and the heartbeat has gone out. In fact, erratic heartbeat is always equated with, is always interpreted as absence of peace, restlessness in a human being. So much so that when we speak the untruth or tell a lie, no one will know that I have told a lie. If you ask me something and I don't tell you the truth, I tell you the untruth, you would never know that I have told you the untruth. But the moment I utter that lie, my heartbeat will go out of stability, out of rhythm for a moment. My heart will start pounding a little faster that you haven't done the right thing. Whenever I do any mistake, the first thing that will happen in my medical physical system is that my heartbeat will become erratic. So whenever we have an erratic heartbeat, let us be sure there is something wrong that we are doing. There is something, we don't have to go and ask someone whether I am doing the right thing or not. The heartbeat will tell us whether we are doing the right thing or not. And the third thing is the pulse. The pulse that is within all of us, which is a combination of the process of breathing and the process of circulation in our blood. And that pulse must be normal, the pulse must be steady. State of mind, absence of peace, absence of calm, absence of quietude. Thus, human equilibrium in essence means a rhythmic breath, a stable heartbeat, or instead of normal, I think steady pulse would be a better word, steady pulse. Whatever action we do, we must not forget that these three things must be achieved. Whatever we do, if our breath can remain rhythmic, if our heartbeat can remain stable, if our pulse can remain steady, that is a test of righteous conduct. Thus, all these 5 teaching techniques which are being recommended have a direct impact on each of these 3. When we are silent, the breath is rhythmic, the heartbeat is stable, the pulse is normal. When we utter a good word, when we utter a prayer, when we utter a thought, when we utter a quotation, the breath is rhythmic, the heartbeat is stable, and the pulse is steady. And it is here that the importance of the third teaching technique comes in. Which is group singing. The children must be taught to sing as much as they can in all the ways they can. Singing means music. There is life in music because the very fact that our heart beats, it has a sound, it has a murmur of its own, is musical. Whatever the child imbibes through the medium of music lives in the memory long after. Again, let's remember that famous poem Solitary Reaper of Wordsworth, when he says, the last lines of the poem, the music in my heart I bore, long after it was heard no more. It becomes a part of the personality, it becomes a part of because when we sing, what happens? Singing means there is a rhythm involved, there is a beat involved. Heartbeat. When we sing something nice, when we sing something good, when we hear some nice music, that rhythm becomes both external and internal. Internally we achieve that equilibrium, and the external environment that we create by singing also aids that process. Therefore, to the extent possible, the children must be taught singing, and singing in group, because while singing in group, another value is imbibed. That if you do not sing with the other people, you destroy the whole song. Therefore, in this orchestra of life, each of us has to sing with the same effectiveness, with the same power as anyone else has. Because that's the harmony, the value of harmony, the value of cooperation, which are all sub-values of these 5 basic values, can be inculcated through this process of group singing. Narrating beautiful aspects like that we must love all, we must serve all, we must be good to everyone, we must not see any evil. If the teacher has to say this thing, he goes into a class, stands like a statue and says, love all, serve all, be good, think no evil, do no evil, see no evil. It will fall flat like mashed potatoes. It will have no impact. But if the teacher goes and teacher, then the tune that gets inbuilt into the memory will come out at the right moment and remind the child that this is the truth, this is what leads to righteous conduct, this is what leads to peace. Take a simple example like love all, serve all. If it could be sung in this way, please pardon my extremely bad voice, but please bear with me. Love all, serve all, listen to the call of the Lord. Love all, serve all, this is the call of the Lord. Think no evil, do no evil, see no evil, says the Lord. Think no evil, do no evil, love all, serve all, says the Lord. Love all, serve all, listen to the call of the Lord. Love all, serve all, this is the call of the Lord. A song, the amount of, pardoning my bad voice if somebody good sings it, somebody with a good voice sings it, it will have a very deep impact. And good voice can be developed, that's a medical statement. If we can achieve success in silent sitting, we can also develop a very good voice. Because the rest that we give to our vocal cords, which keep jumping, process of gymnastics throughout the day, that stillness is achieved, that gives us the power to be musical and to sing. And group singing as a teaching technique is specially recommended for the teacher and for the students, because it results in giving that rhythm to the personality of the child, which will stand him in very good stead at all points of time. Therefore, it is for this reason that music is taught as an essential art in all the schools. It's not only an art, it's also a science. It's the science of physiology. It's the art of teaching. The fourth teaching technique that's recommended especially for the teachers is storytelling. Dr. Art was narrating that those small stories that his father had narrated to him before 1950 lived with him, became a part of him. What powerful impression and impact a story can have on a child is absolutely unforgettable. The story comes back to the memory whenever a similar situation comes. The children love to listen to stories. They love to be a part of stories. In fact, however, small children and big children and old children, all children, in fact, all of us love to listen to stories. Because while the story is being narrated, something very interesting happens. We identify ourselves with the protagonist of that story. We ourselves become Julius Caesar, we ourselves become Macbeth, we ourselves become Romeos. To believe that what would have happened if I was there. And it is this identification with the protagonist being a sequence, a part of the sequence of that story, which is what gives us joy, which is what gives us message, because each story has a message. It is also important that we must make sure that the message of the story is properly understood by the children. Sometimes the story may be simple, the message may be directly understood. At other times, the teacher may have to take some extra pains to explain the message so that the wrong message is not understood. The priest was preaching and telling the citizens of that small village that it is extremely bad to consume alcohol. And he thought he will give a very scientific discourse. He brought a beaker, a glass beaker, put some worms into it, and added some alcohol in the presence of everyone. And all the worms died. And the priest had a blooming face and he said, see what happened? What does this mean? He says, what does this mean? It means that when you drink alcohol, all the worms in your stomach will die. So that risk always remains. You may be trying to convey something, but the child may understand other things because the development of intellect may not be as complete as we have thought it to be. So teacher must make sure what the moral of that story is, has that been understood by taking an opportunity on a subsequent date by asking the child to relate that story. That will improve his memory, means it will take him closer to truth. The inspiration that is contained in that story will take him to righteous conduct. And take a small reference here to the father of my nation, India, Mahatma Gandhi. He saw a story being enacted on the stage in the form of a play about a king who always stuck to the truth, however hard the hardship be. In fact, that character may not have ever spoken truth in his life, one who was playing that part in the drama. But the message went so deep into Mahatma Gandhi's mind that he said that I will stay by truth, whatever life. But he became an eternal star in the firmament of this world. And that is the fame, that is the name, that is the joy that anyone would like to achieve. That is the status and stature that anyone would like to achieve. To be a part of this world, to be a part of this history. The history of this world is the history of those few people who had the ability to stay by values, to live by values, and to be committed by values. The history of this world is molded, as Napoleon used to say, not that he is the best example of history, but he used to say that strongest is he who stands alone, that yes, I must stand by these values. And it is here that we must clearly understand that if the teacher has 60 or 40 or 25 students in a class, it's not that all 25 will become Einsteins or Wordsworths or Gandhis or Abraham Lincolns. Maybe only one. But if we do not undertake this value education, we are reducing the scope of that one leader also emerging. 24 good followers. This world needs both leaders and followers. What the child becomes is his own doing. That's his own, how much hard work that he has done. All the teacher has done is sprouted the seed, has planted the seed, and the child takes care of that seed and sees what he becomes of it. And this is the sequence of storytelling. The storytelling can be used by all the teachers in every class, in every subject. Use as many stories as you can, in all the ways you can, because stories would be so inspiring to a child that one can never imagine the efficacy of it. And the last direct teaching technique that is recommended in the course of education in human values is what are called the group activities. Group activities mean things like role play, things like attitude tests, things like motivation games. For instance, while teaching in the class, a normal subject or an exclusive class for value education, there is something which you feel has to be driven home more effectively than what has been conveyed by a story or by a song. So what does the teacher do? Asks the children to act out that situation. Just in a class without any preparation, asks the children to speak dialogues, to imagine that this was happening, and that role play takes place. Children to various options that exist. Because values have various levels. We can have awareness of values, we can have commitment to values. I must first of all know that there are two ways of doing this. This is the first way, this is the second way. And second is that I must have the willpower to do the right thing, which is the second aspect. So the teacher creates the awareness of values through these group activities, which can be in any form. Teacher can utilize any class, any forum to use these group activities as an effective medium of value teaching. In other words, all these 5 teaching techniques, we are not telling the children about what the ultimate meaning of truth or what the ultimate meaning of peace is. It will all fall flat on him. When we are inculcating silent sitting, when we are practicing group singing, when we are teaching songs, when we are teaching storytelling, when we are involving the children in group activities, the values will themselves go home. We don't find their place, because that is the efficacy of the teaching techniques. The second and third teaching techniques are also very important. One is integration of values in text curriculum, and the other is integration of values in co-curricular work. Integration of values in text curriculum means we have many subjects in our schools to be taught. We teach them physics, we teach them chemistry, we teach them science, we teach them mathematics, we teach them English, we teach them history, we teach them geography, we teach them everything. We teach them so much until the point that, as someone has said, they've got stuffed memories and starved intellects. And we stuff the memories, keep forcing things in without resulting in total indigestion, the total indigestion of intellect and mind. Every class of every teacher in this world can change into a value class. How? If the teacher utilizes the message of that subject, the values involved in that subject, and along with the knowledge that he is trying to pass on to the teacher, he also brings out the values. Take a simple example. We may be teaching a subject like English. We may be teaching language. We may be teaching poetry. But in every poetry, there are various ways of teaching a poem, you know. As we all know, one can teach Coleridge in one sequence, and the other person can reflect on those important things that Coleridge has mentioned, which have got direct relevance to our life. So language can be used to convert every class into a value class. When we teach history, We bring out the morals, we bring out the lessons, bring out the pitfalls that the human beings have indulged in to enable the children to know that what mistakes have been done in the past. The human power, the human discrimination, the human effort lies in not repeating those mistakes, but in going beyond them, in transcending them, and avoiding those pitfalls in such a way that our progress can be faster. So much so that even when we teach science, we can teach values. As I was taking the example of a physical balance. Physical balance, the properties of physical balance are the properties of balance in human life. You teach a small experiment to the children that you take a small plant of red ink, put it in a bottle of red ink. What happens? In 2 days' time, the stem of the plant becomes red. It changes its color. The water that was red has gone into the plant. One may finish that as an experiment that all plants derive food from wherever they are. But one could go beyond that and explain that this process is our life. Whatever company, whatever situation we live in, we try and derive inspiration from it. If we remain in good company, if we remain in healthy company, if we remain in clean surroundings, we will have cleanliness going up. If we live in uncleanliness, there is every possibility that what will go in us is also unclean. Unclean inputs can never result in clean outputs in a human being. That can only happen in a biogas plant, that you feed in something garbage and what comes out is good. In a human being, input and output have direct relevance, have a direct sequence. It's more of an equation. There is a multiplier effect, both for good things and bad things, because that's the way the human psychology works. Therefore, every subject, even a subject like mathematics, let's take a small example. Rather than telling them that this is the way of making maximum profit, that if you buy a thing for £1 and you sell it in your retail store for £2, how much profit you've made? 100%, very good. 100 out of 100 marks. That's one way of doing it. The other is, there are 2 shops in your colony. There is a seller who sells a particular object or a particular commodity at £1, 50 pence. And the other person sells the same item for £2. Who would you buy from? What will the children say? I would buy from the person who sells it cheaper, because you would like to think that he is more fair. So he would go and buy from £1.50. Now if the price of that item to that seller is also £1.50, he is selling to you at £1.50, or the price of that item is £1.48 and he is selling to you at £1.50. The other person is selling to you at £2. You would continue to buy from £1.50 until the point that his business breaks down, because he is not making adequate profit. Therefore, in that process of teaching profit and loss, we would also teach that it is not bad to have nominal profit. Nominal profit is a desirable trait. It is the excess profit which is bad. If we cash on somebody who is not making enough adequate profit, we will come to a stage that his business will come to a standstill and we'll have to buy the goods of the person who was selling them at £2 at £2.50, because they wouldn't be available for any other price. So in other words, whether it is ratio proportion, whether it is profit and loss, or it's unitary method, or it's algebra, or it's geometry, perfection of a geometry, equilateral triangle, an isosceles triangle, a square, a rectangle, a circle, whatever we teach has got adequate number of values that the teacher must make all the efforts to bring out in a classroom situation. In other text curriculum, through the textbooks. Therefore, we do not require a separate set of books, or we do not need to change up and throw up the present books that we have. Present books are good enough, and would become better if we can add this element of values to it. That's like putting a cherry on a cake. We are giving cake, it's all right, but a cherry on a cake has own joy, a charm of its own. And the third segment that the school has to use is integration of values into co-curricular work. Co-curricular work means that in a class, in a school, a lot of time is spent on sports, on games, on hobbies, on creations, on creative periods, on social work, and 1,000 other things, on dance, on dance, on drama, on excursions. So when you are taking children out for excursion, let it not be only blah blah, let it be an occasion, an opportunity to imbibe the values of nature, to imbibe the values of cooperation. When you're teaching games to games to the children, say take a simple example of a game of football. And how many values are contained in that football? One is that if one person picks up the ball and starts running, takes the ball out of the field, then what do the other people do? Ball is meant to be shared by all the people. Therefore, in this life, this ball of happiness, this ball of resources, if we wish to play this game of life, if we wish to enjoy this life, has to be shared by all. Everyone must get his chance, everyone must get his opportunity. And no one would get his opportunity because ball doesn't come anybody's way. You have to rush to the ball. You have to go towards the ball. So the game of football is used to imbibe values. The game of simple physical training exercises can be used to imbibe values. To walk in straight lines, what it means to be in a queue. The value of straight line is perhaps the most important value in life. It is said that those people who are crooked reach the destination faster, because they think that by being crooked they can reach the point faster. But even elementary geometry teaches us that the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, and nothing but a straight line can take us fastest to the destination. So if we want our destination as peace, crookedness would only delay the process. And if we wish to reach faster, we have to go by that straight line, and straight line means nothing but following the sum total of these 5 values: truth, righteous conduct, peace, love, and non-violence. Thus, a combination of these 3. One doesn't have to be, we are not talking of creating specialists of value education. As Dr. Art was saying, specialists are a very dangerous set of people nowadays. There was a person who had a toothache, and he went to a very renowned dentist, thinking that his toothache will be set right. And the dentist quietly apologized to him. He said, "Sir, the toothache is in the lower set of your teeth. I am a specialist in the upper set of the teeth. I can't do anything. Anything about the lower set of my teeth, at least you can clean up my upper set of the teeth." He says, "But I'm sorry, I only specialized in the third tooth from this part of the gum, and that's my specialization. I didn't done a special course in Wisconsin University on that." He says, "I hope you can clean up that tooth." He says, "No, I don't do cleaning of that tooth. I only attend to the root canal. If there is any problem in the root canal, I'm a specialist. I have done an extra degree in that subject." So much so that what specialization means today is, specialist is a person who knows more and more about less and less. A bigger specialist is a person who knows even more and more about even less and less. An ultimate specialist is a person who knows everything about nothing. We are not creating specialists. We are creating specialists in life. Specialists in life means that we have the ability to confront ourselves with any situation. And in an evolved person, he has an answer to a scientific question. He has an answer to a question of art. He has an answer to a question of music. He has an answer to a question of anything. Because his level of evolution, he has attained that knowledge by knowing which everything else is attained. He has that intuitive capability which can solve any problem. Thus, we wish to create in this world, if we want to leave this world a happier place than what we found it when we came, a set of people who can think for themselves, who can fend this way for themselves, and who can show the way through their own luminosity. Thus, this course of education in human values enjoins upon all teachers who get to know this, that they need not wait for the curriculum to change. They need not wait from the situation to change. If this course ends on 31st March, let the All Fools' Day of this year be a day when one fool less would be there in this world. That at least one teacher will take a dedication that he or she will take this message of human values into the classroom, into the school, by making the determination of using these 5 teaching techniques, by using integration of values through text curriculum, and by using integration of values through co-curricular activities. If all of us can consider doing our duty to the best of our capacity, we would perhaps be a happier person than what we are. What is the reward to a teacher by practicing or teaching education in human values? Maybe you wouldn't get extra money for that. Maybe you'll have to work a lot more hard to find out stories, to find out songs. But the reward is that reward that all the dollars and all the francs and all the rubles in this world cannot buy, and that is peace. Peace is not sold in Oxford or Piccadilly. Peace is to be found in the depth of our own heart. And it is this peace that will give us the satisfaction of having lived our life well. And it is in this context I am reminded of a beautiful saying of Sri Sathya Sai when he says, "The secret of happiness does not lie in doing what one likes, The secret of happiness does not lie in doing what one likes, but in liking what one has to do. We are teachers if we are. If we chose that profession, we may have landed into that profession. But we must make sure that we must leave this educational system a better educational system than what we found it. And that cannot be done unless that value education takes place. I would close with a very small story, and that is perhaps symbolic of how and why each of us should be continuously doing our duty, because everything in the universe, everything in the nature is showing us this way. In a hermitage in a very ancient country, there were 4 students attached to a very evolved teacher. The teacher asked them to bring a flower as a token of respect and gratitude to the teacher, which they think is the best. So the 4 students went into 4 directions, and he told them that you should come back by evening. One student brought a beautiful rose, marigold. The 4th student did not come back. When he came back after a week, he was looking tired. He was looking as if he hadn't slept for all these days. And the teacher asked him, "What is it that you have brought?" He put forth empty hands in front of the teacher and said, "I'm sorry, I could not find any beautiful flower in this world." He says, "How is it that you couldn't find any beautiful flower?" He says, "I went to all directions. I went into all the gardens. I saw all the beautiful flowers. Every time I extended my hand to pluck a beautiful flower from its plant, I felt I was going to disturb the silence of that plant. The flower was saying a silent prayer to God. It was spreading its joy, irrespective of the fact that I was about to pluck it. I didn't have the heart to disturb that plant. I didn't have the heart to disturb that flower. And in disgust, I started walking to a place where there was autumn, where the autumn season had come in and the plants had begun to fall down. The flowers had begun to fall down. And then I saw from a plant which was by the side of a stream, one petal of a plant fell down into the water. I thought, this plant has finished its prayer. I should extend my hand, bring it to you as my offering as the most beautiful plant who has lived his life. I went close to the stream, extended my hand, tried to pick up that petal, and what did I find? There was an ant moving on that petal. That plant had broken, that flower, that petal had broken its contact with the flower, not because it wished to end its life, but it saw an ant drowning in the water and it wanted to give help. Even a plant does its duty. Everything in this universe, sisters and brothers, is saying its silent prayer to God, to the Creator. We can never pay back the debt of gratitude that we owe to one who has created us, but by living these 5 essential human values into our lives. If we wish to be happier persons than what we are, these values have to find place in whatever segment of life, in whatever sector of activity we are. And we do earnestly hope that this conference would generate enough enthusiasm to the teachers who are here to take up this message of human values into their school system, because it is only a beginning made like this. The mustard seed, the seed of the mustard plant is so small, but it results in a massive tree which gives shade to all. The small seed, the small injection, the small capsule, the small antidote for all the ailments of this world is education in human values. It's a panacea for us, it's a panacea for our lives, it's a panacea for this society. So we do earnestly hope that you will have ample opportunity. We will have ample opportunity. I have no right to say you will. It has to begin with me. It has to begin with all of us. We will have ample opportunity to live these values in life. To teach directly these values, we may require somebody's permission. To live these values, we require nobody's permission. And if we live these values, the children who come into contact with us would automatically imbibe these values. It is said that anything that comes into contact, there is a very famous tree called the sandalwood tree. That tree has got, the wood of that tree has got fragrance in it. Whatever comes into contact with the sandal tree imbibes a part of the fragrance. So if we have sandal in us, if we have that fragrance of values in us, anything that comes into contact with us will also have fragrance. In small measure, in big measure, is the destiny of the child. You can take a horse to a river, but you cannot make it drink water unless the horse wants to. We do not teach anyone, we cannot teach anyone. We can only help the child to learn, provided what we are trying to teach is right and useful from the viewpoint of life. So with these few words, we would end with a small song that I have requested Dr. Art to join me to reduce the cacophony that I will produce. Will convey the message of the day, which is the message of these values. I only hope that was not a request not to sing the song. We will sing, you please follow us. Start the day with love, fill the day with love, end the day with love, sweet love, that is the way to God. Start the day with love, fill the day with love, end the day with love, sweet love, that is the way to God. Start the day with love, start the day with love, fill the day with love, fill the day with love, end the day with love, sweet love, that is the way to God. Start the way with love, fill the day with love, end the day with love, sweet love, that is the way to God. Start the day with love, start the day with love, fill the day with love, fill the day with love, end the day with love, sweet love, that is the way to God. Start the day with love, fill the day with love, spend the day with love, sweet love, that is the way to God. Thank you.
Well, what a day, what an afternoon. This reminds me of the battlefield when we as soldiers were soldiering on in the United Kingdom, talking about human values, and when our American friends were doing the same and our European friends were doing something likewise. There were perhaps people who did not believe what we were trying to put across to them. And so we communicated this message to our field marshal and told him of the problems, of the difficulties. And he said to us, "Don't worry, I will bring 2 generals, they say, to put things right." And indeed, he has brought these 2 generals today in the persons of Dr. Jamsai and Sanjeev Choudhary. It has been a beautiful afternoon, a very clear and able exposition of what human values are about. An exposition which would make it possible for simple, if I may use the expression, simple, ordinary, and even semi-literate or even illiterate people can understand. They have been talking from their hearts, explaining their own personal experiences without reference to textbooks at all. So it has been marvelous. And I think really we are all so full this afternoon. We need not go to the dining room this evening at all. I suggest that we should ask the kitchen and dining room staff to lock the doors and go away. We are just too full. We want to thank you immensely, Dr. Choudhary and Sanjeev. And may I say to you how I personally have benefited so much from your discourses this afternoon. And I'm sure all the ladies and gentlemen, our brothers and sisters, have equally benefited from thought-provoking discourses. And we do hope that this will not be the end of hearing you. And I'm sure that after this meeting, there will be the opportunity for some of you who may want to approach them and have further talks with them, either in the lounge or somewhere else. We want to thank you very, very immensely from the bottom of our hearts, and we want to thank our brother who has made it possible for them to come.